So I've had the a7 III for about a year now. It's been with me on a 2-month backpacking trip through Europe, plenty of road trips throughout the US, and plenty of adventures in my own city here. So in this review, I'm going to cover my long-term impressions of it, share like 100 of my sample photos, and give my opinion on whether or not I still think you should buy this camera. So yeah, let's just get right into it, guys. So to start off this review, like I do any of my other reviews, I'm going to talk about the size and weight of the camera. So as you know, the a7 III isn't super compact, but it's not like a huge, professional DSLR either. It weighs about, I believe, 23 ounces, which is about 650 grams for metric users, I think. And the actual dimensions of it, without a lens on it at least, are actually not that big. It's not like an APS-C camera, but it's not like obnoxiously huge. For me, I like compact kits, and while I typically prefer to shoot with APS-C, when you put a little lens on the a7 III, it's not quite like a pocket camera, but it's still pretty good. And then in terms of build quality, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, this is a pretty expensive, like professional grade camera. Build quality is amazing. The body is made out of, I believe, magnesium alloy. I don't know what that means, but obviously it's heavy duty and very sturdy in the hand. The mount is stainless steel, if I'm not mistaken, which means I guess it should last for a long time. And then in terms of weather sealing, Sony doesn't claim that it's completely weather sealed, they just say dust and moisture resistant. And I found that to be true. I've taken this thing into a lot of nasty conditions, like I've shot in like absolute rainstorms, snowstorms, that sort of thing. I've taken it onto plenty of beaches and that sort of thing, and I haven't had any issues with durability when it comes to taking it into inclement weather conditions. That being said, I'm not encouraging you to, dunk your camera into a lake. Don't do that. But if you want to go out and shoot in like a little bit of a rainstorm, you don't need to be afraid as long as you're using a weather sealed lens such as this. And then as for like lifespan of the camera, so to speak, the a7 III is rated to about 200,000 shutter clicks. And last I checked, I think I'm at about 27,000, so I've got quite a bit of life left in mine. And then in terms of comfort and like day-to-day usability, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the grip. I personally think the grip on this camera is definitely big enough. I do know that some like DSLR converts, like people who came from Canon and Nikon, they've complained that the grip isn't big enough. I originally came from using an APS-C, A6000, so there's no complaints from me there. I think the grip is super comfortable. I can hang on to it for quite a long time and not start to feel like discomfort and that sort of thing. And if it is still too tiny for you, there's like 100 different OEM and off-brand battery grip extensions that you can just buy. In terms of button layout, you have a lot of customizable buttons. I have, I believe, 6 of them bound. I have the C1, C2, C3, and C4 buttons bound to different things, a couple of things on the spinny like dial thing on the back, and then I have magnifier on the AF on button. So yeah, there's an insane amount of customizability to where you can customize this camera to pretty much be as like smooth as you like. Like you can customize it to your specific style. And then the last comfort feature I'd like to touch on, so to speak, is the silent shooting mode. I don't usually use it, but especially when I was in Europe, I was taking a lot of pictures inside like churches, libraries, that sort of thing, and not having this obnoxiously loud shutter sound. It was amazing. Silent shooting mode does have some minor effects on image quality, like it adds more like banding to images and stuff like that, but I've never found it to actually degrade my images to what mattered. But yeah, that's a very nice feature to have. And then in terms of like jacks and ports, the camera does come with a microphone jack, of course. And on that subject, it does come with a headphone jack for audio monitoring, a mini HDMI cable, and then like a mini USB MIDI thing, and then of course USB-C. USB-C, it can charge over USB-C, or you can transfer images, which is super convenient. And then on the other side of the camera here, we have 2 card slots, but it should be noted that only a single slot can support UHS 2 cards, which is kind of like the modern standard for like super fast write speeds. And then when it comes to autofocus, if you've used any other Sony camera, obviously you know the autofocus is insane, and the a7 III is definitely no exception. In my time using it, I really haven't had any issues with like hunting, even in low light conditions, provided you're using the correct lens. Like right now I have the Nifty 50 on here, which as you can hear, it's actually pretty noisy and it's not the greatest for autofocus, but typically the camera itself, the autofocus is insane and extremely accurate. And then like autofocus features, like EyeAF is very good. I do believe this does have animate EyeAF, though I could be mistaken. But human EyeAF has been amazing for me. I've pretty much never missed focus on a face since I built this camera, which is insane. And then for subject tracking, AF-C, I've never really had any issues with like losing track of a moving subject. I like to shoot a lot of vehicles, like cars as they drive by and whatnot. And typically the camera's been really good at locking in focus and keeping focus as it moves through the frame. Like dude, like the continuous tracking on this camera is so good, I can't even imagine what Sony's newer bodies are like with their like AI-based tracking. I bet that's just like nuts. And then finally, if you're into manual focus like I am, like our Sony cameras, it does feature focus peaking and focus magnifier, and they both work amazingly. Not much more to say about that. So next up, we're going to talk about the back screen on the camera, which I do think is kind of a weak point. I mean, it's not too bad, but some competitors have higher quality screens, and a big issue with this screen, in my opinion, is the fact that it only flips 90 out and 35 down. I do not know why Sony didn't give us like an extra flippy screen that you can flip out. That's like the biggest thing that I kind of hate about this camera, is the fact that I can't see myself when recording like I can with my ZV-E10. But in any case, the screen is typically, you know, good enough for photography. I have been in some situations where it's too bright outside and the screen is kind of tough to see even on like the sunny mode, so I'll have to, you know, resort to the viewfinder. That being said, the EVF in this camera is fantastic. I mean, like, it has 2.3 million dots, which, I don't know, that sounds like a big number to me. It looks good enough to my eyes. And, like, I don't believe there's blackout. Like, the refresh rate is very good on it, and it's absolutely massive. So, no complaints about the EVF for me. And now on to battery life. So, the battery life in this camera is actually amazing. So, I came from the Sony a6000, that was my first Sony camera, and the battery life on the a6000 was terrible. So, maybe, you know, my perception is a bit skewed, but the battery life on the a7 III is nuts. So it is rated officially to 610 shots when using the viewfinder. I've found you can typically get a lot more than that if you turn off the camera in between shots, which is what I do anyways. It only takes like half a second to start back up. I found like the first time I tested the battery life completely was when I was doing my European backpacking trip. I took this camera every single day when I was in Lisbon and shot about 150 to 200 photos with it a day. And after a week, I still had like 11% battery left. And coming from the a6000 before that, it was just like my mind exploded. So yeah, battery life, needless to say, is pretty amazing. And then next up, we're talking about image quality. I mean, I don't even think I have to say too much here necessarily. You already know that the photos that come out of this camera are incredible. Like, everything about them looks amazing. 24.3 megapixels is kind of a sweet spot in my opinion. It's just enough to where you get good quality images that you can crop into and also print out at big sizes, but they're not so huge as to where to slow down your computer. My laptop sucks. Like, I can't edit like, you know, 4K video on that thing. So yeah, 24.3 megapixels is just enough in my opinion to be like a sweet spot for 99% of photographers. And then low light performance on this thing is pretty good too. I mean, I've shot at 10,000 ISO pretty frequently, and it has, I mean, like the results at 10,000 ISO still look amazing. There have been some situations where I've had to push it up to 20 or 30,000. I put those results on the screen here. My friends and I legally explored an abandoned insane asylum, so I was shooting with flashlights and high ISO, and the results, they didn't look amazing, but they were definitely usable for like, you know, casual photos of my friends. So I put those up on the screen and you can kind of check them out. And then finally, dynamic range is pretty amazing in this too. With my previous camera, the a6000, I typically had to shoot a lot of bracketed exposures in order to get like even lighting for sunsets and other, you know, high contrast lighting situations. With this, the dynamic range is good enough to where like I can shoot a photo. I usually underexpose for the skies, but I can shoot a photo at like midday or sunset, and I can even out the lighting in post-processing pretty evenly. Like the raw files on this camera have such an insane amount of detail. So yeah, like I said, I've had this camera for about a year, so I'm just gonna shut up for like a minute, play some background music, and let you look at some of the pictures I've taken, some of my favorites. needed a drink. So anyways, next up we're talking about video performance. So the camera does offer 4K 30 FPS. I mean, I think that's pretty standard on most high-end cameras. It does shoot at 8-bit, not 10-bit video. And then of course, it has S-Log3 and other color grading things. I don't get too deep into that, to be honest. Like, I'm kind of an amateur. I have my YouTube videos with just like the standard like movie mode on Sony cameras, and I am honestly happy with how it turns out. But I have shot a few things in S-Log on this and tried color grading them in post, and I mean, as you might expect, it looks amazing. But yeah, this is my main YouTube camera for a long time too, and obviously my main like photography camera. So I usually did shoot in 1080p because I really don't think you need much more than that for this kind of YouTube stuff, like me just talking to the camera, like saying things for 30 minutes straight. So 1080p to my eyes looks pretty good on this thing. No complaints there. And then there's another kind of strange feature on this camera called S&Q mode. It sort of does like fast motion and slow motion in camera itself, though it does kind of degrade video quality and you lose the audio on it, so I typically prefer not to use it. I know Mark Bennett's Camera Crisis, I think that's his channel name, has a better video on it. You can go check that out if you're interested more in S&Q mode. Most people say just don't use it. So do I think that the a7 III is good for video users? I'd say yes and no. I mean, like I said, 4K 30 FPS, like video quality to me at least looks amazing. It has a microphone jack, incredible in-body image stabilization. I haven't touched on that yet, but yeah, the IBIS, very, very good. You can shoot handheld down to like 1/10 of a second, even with my fairly shaky hands, as you can see. But the absolute biggest issue, in my opinion, is the fact that the screen is not completely articulating, like you can't flip it around to see yourself. I think for most people this probably isn't going to be a huge issue. Like if you're behind the camera most of the time, like you don't need a flippy screen. That being said, for me, I decided to replace this thing with the ZV-E10 for my main YouTube camera, just because it's so nice being able to see myself, make sure I'm actually in focus, and make sure my hair isn't like in my eyes or something like that. So that's really the only downside for video with this camera, is the lack of flip out screen. So yeah, who should buy the a7 III? I would say probably not beginners. So I know sometimes people just suggest the a7 III to beginners because it gets them a fat affiliate commission. Link in description if you want to buy this thing. But in any case, I do think the camera might actually be a little bit too much for a beginner. It can be a little complex, it's big, the lenses are big, and I think most importantly, it's just kind of expensive. Like when you're getting into photography, you might not have a lot of money to throw around, and buying a $1,800 body with a $800 zoom lens might not be in the cards for most people. For an absolute beginner who's not even sure if they're super deep into photography, I would suggest just buying an APS-C camera, potentially like the ZV-E10 for example. Now that being said, for enthusiasts and professionals alike, this thing is an absolute monster. I mean, like, amazing image quality, amazing battery life, 2 card slots for professionals, a complete suite of customizability, like so many customizable buttons, a customizable menu. Like, you can tweak this thing to whatever your specific needs are. And speaking from experience, as a professional, when you're actually shooting in the field, like in an actual important shoot, like a wedding, a like high-end corporate photo session, something like that, you want a camera that not only produces amazing images, but is also easy to use. And I would say that's what the Sony a7 III is. Like, it shoots great photos, but it's also kind of no BS. You can set it up and you can change settings on the fly, like whenever you need to. So for enthusiasts looking to upgrade and professionals looking for just a beast of a camera, I would suggest buying this thing. But yeah, that pretty much sums up this video, guys. Like I said, if you're a professional or enthusiast looking to upgrade, you just cannot go wrong with this camera. I'll drop an affiliate link in the description below. Obviously, if you click that and buy the camera, I do get a little bit of a commission, which allows me to buy more junk like this to review. But yeah, that sums up the video, guys. If you're looking to get into full frame and you want to research lenses and stuff, I have covered quite a few lenses on the channel here. I'll just link those on the end screen at the end. But yeah, if you like this video, consider liking and even subscribing. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.